In today's video, we have all kinds of NHL news and rumors around the league to discuss. Tonight's rumor wheel focusing on teams like Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa, LA, and the Rangers, as well as the Los Angeles Kings. We have some more updates on potential NHL expansion, comments from Gary Bettman, and one of the potential owners in Houston that was very interesting today. We have some injury updates, some updates on some PTOs, and more coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we're well into preseason action now, all kinds of games, which also means, unfortunately, we're seeing a few injuries. So we'll get a few updates there and some PTO updates here as well, which we'll kick off the video with. In San Jose, youngster Thomas Borlo, who was certainly had a pretty decent ending to last year, and was certainly hoping to find a spot in training camp and put together a full season here with the Sharks, has unfortunately suffered a lower body injury, and there's now some doubt whether or not he'll be ready and healthy for the start of the regular season. So it's a little bit early yet. We don't know. It's still possible that he has enough time to recover, but certainly I guess there's some concern about that. A few other updates as well around some injuries. I know in the Ottawa-Toronto game tonight, Ridley Gregg left after the first period, did not return. The belief was because he had gotten a stick to the mouth and there was some dental work to be done. Doesn't sound like anything serious, but I guess whenever a player doesn't come back like that, you're always kind of wonder and hope that it's nothing serious. We also saw a big hit tonight in the Rangers and Islanders game with Philip Hedl. Looked like he could have suffered a serious injury, but he did return. Took a big hit from Islanders defenseman Scott Mayfield, and there was concern over a potential serious leg or knee injury. I know he had to be helped off, and it didn't look good, but he did end up coming back to the game, so we'll have to wait and see if there's any updates on any potential long-term effects from that. A couple of PTO updates. Matt Martin of the New York Islanders, we know, is on a PTO, and came across some articles today, the local writers suggesting that even though he's been there a long time, obviously well-known commodity to the team and to the management crew there. Obviously Lou knows Martin very, very well. It's going to be very difficult for them to sign him no matter how good of a training camp he has, because they have absolutely zero cap space to do that with. Now, they could make some moves. It just seems unlikely at this stage of his career that they're going to make a cost-cutting or roster-cutting move with another player to make room for him at his age with even a league minimum salary. So the expectation is that barring some type of trade or a waiver move or something to create some space, which at this point is not obvious or expected, that we could see either Martin not be signed, he could possibly be cut. The other option, though, is that he could carry the PTO into the regular season. Like, you don't have to end a PTO at the end of training camp. Some players, like we saw last year with the Bruins and Danton Heinen, if there is mutual interest to keep them around and eventually get them signed, the player can continue on a PTO. They can practice with the club. They just can't play in regular season games without a standard player contract. So, and you can stay on a PTO through the entire year up until the trade deadline. There's no rules against that. Not to say that that's really ideal. It's not, but it's technically possible. So expect the Islanders, if they do decide that they'd like to figure it out and he's willing to stick around, he could be around the club. They could obviously use his leadership. He could be in practices, and they'll have to wait for something to open up to see, either that somebody gets hurt or they decide to move somebody that's not obvious right now or something along those lines to maybe create a spot for him. But it's kind of difficult to see how that could work out right now. One PTO as well that's already been cut, we mentioned yesterday, was Aaron Dell in San Jose. That did not last long. And another one ended in Vancouver. Dylan Ferguson was there on a PTO. The young goaltender, who's actually now 26, hard to imagine, was cut from his PTO with Vancouver after they signed Kevin Lankinen. I think he was essentially brought in there on the PTO as insurance in case they couldn't come to terms with Lankinen on a contract. But after he signed, they released him, and he's already on to his new, his new journey here. He signed a one-year deal in the American Hockey League with the Iowa Wild. So he'll be playing with the Minnesota AHL affiliate and will be on an AHL-only contract. Of course, that could change later on, but with the Minnesota Wild goaltending situation the way it is, with Fleury and with Gustafsson and with Wallstead, I'm not sure how they're going to handle that situation, because the belief is that they do want to get Wallstead NHL games this year. Gustafsson was mentioned in trade talk throughout the summer, but it never happened. So Are they going to carry 3? We don't know what they're going to do there. So to have an extra body for the AHL team makes good sense for Minnesota to do that. Now, as I mentioned, there's been more talk around expansion. We had a couple of interesting comments here. One was from NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman. He said he kind of poured cold water on it, and again said that it's not something that's imminent or really, high on the radar of the NHL at the present time. But I mean, we also heard him say not that long ago that they were committed to Arizona and he was confident it was going to work out. And then, bam, within no time, they're off to Utah. So to me, we do have an NHL Board of Governors meeting coming up here soon. There was some reports like last week that we talked about that suggested that it could be a top topic on the agenda for that meeting. And they would either possibly officially, formally open the expansion process, which would allow interested groups to officially apply and put their plans forth to obtain a future expansion franchise. Or could they even have a side deal with a group already that they're going to do? They don't have to formally announce a expansion process and allow teams and groups to apply. They could decide, we really like this group in this location and we're going to work with them and to create something in this. If they keep it quiet enough, maybe it just gets announced. You never know. No guarantees that they go through a formal process and application period. But either way, Bettman has poured cold water on that, saying it's not at the forefront of their agenda here, and it's not something that's kind of imminently in their immediate plans. But there was interesting comments from prospective owner in Houston, Tillman Fertitta, of course, who owns the Houston Rockets, who has been linked and rumored to be interested in bringing an NHL club to Houston for a number of years now. He was talking and had made comments that there's very much high level of interest on their part to bring the NHL to Houston, but he did make comments suggesting that he wasn't too keen on the NHL's expansion fees. They were kind of hoping that they might be able to get those numbers down. So that could, kind of cause some issues in getting an NHL team to Houston. Now, keep in mind, I don't know what Fertitta's plans are. We've heard different reports over the years. There were times when he was going to be the majority owner, times where he was interested and wanted to be an investor, but may not be the majority owner. And now I've also seen reports that there are multiple groups interested in bringing a team to Houston. So, there's obviously another group. I don't know the names or who they are, but I do know that there is supposedly another group. Now, of course, with the NBA already there, it probably would be easy for the future Houston NHL team, because I do think there will be one at some point, most likely, for them to share an arena with the Rockets. That's a possibility. There is a rich history of hockey in that area. They've had different levels of hockey before, fairly high up. The Houston Aeros have a long history. I do think eventually it will happen. But hearing the comments of Fertitta with the concerns over the expansion fees does kind of make you wonder, because we've heard about, maybe 2 or 4 more clubs coming in the next, it's going to be a while. We're probably looking at 5, 7, 8 years. I'm not sure how long it's going to be, but, not tomorrow, that's for sure. And I would suspect that the odds of Houston being one of them are pretty good, but, at the end of the day, if groups are not willing to pay what the NHL wants, then it may not come together. So we'll see. So according to Bettman, it's a forefront here. But Fertitta's comments, not only did he say that there was a high level of interest on his side, and because he said this before, this is not breaking news. But what he did say about the expansion fees was new, and he did say that the NHL is looking to expand. So I really firmly believe that the NHL has had prolonged talks with some of these groups that have been expressing interest here on multiple occasions. We've seen kind of how Ryan Smith got Utah in there. He was persistent. If you want a team bad enough and you can find a way to make it happen and kind of get your group in there, we know there's multiple groups in Atlanta. We know now there's multiple groups for sure in Houston. And a lot of people think they're the 2 most logical destinations for the next 2 teams. You could put Houston in the west, Atlanta in the east. and the conferences would be even again. Would they start at the same time? We don't know. Hard to say. There's too preliminary for that. But at the end of the day, interesting comments nonetheless. And I think the expansion fees, because we know when they sold even the Coyotes to Utah, when the Senators sold last year to Michael Landauer, of course, we know that was a big part of wanting to get the expansion fees up. Like these sales were pretty close in and around, the Coyotes were, and the Sens were just shy of $1 billion. So do you think they're going to have an expansion fee under $1 billion? I don't think so, which is crazy because you think the Vegas Golden Knights paid, I think it was $500 million. Seattle paid $650, I believe it was. Seattle hasn't even been in the league that long, and I know franchise values have gone up a fair bit, but that's crazy to think it could be. Some people were suggesting the last time this kind of came up in the last probably 4 to 6 months that they could be looking for $1.5 to $2 billion. That is absolutely insane, and I can see why that would be an issue for some of even these rich people, and also for Quebec City. Gotta keep in mind, these are all U.S. dollars we're talking here. For a Canadian franchise, opponent of that kind of money is even worse with the conversion of Canadian dollars to U.S. dollars. So it's going to be really, really tough, if not impossible. As much as I'd love to see Quebec City happen, they might price them out of it. It's hard to say, but expansion is on the horizon. But according to Gary, it's not. But according to Till and Fertitta, they're definitely looking to do it. But expansion fees are quite costly. We'll see. On the goalie market, Igor Shesterkin, the goalie we talked about yesterday, we got some more updates from him from Pierre LeBrun on Insider Trading on TSN tonight. It says the Rangers are willing to make him the highest paid goalie. We have not seen a goaltender eclipse the Carey Price contract since he signed that, and that was about 7 years ago. So obviously at this point we've seen some big time goalie deals done in recent months here in the last year. We've got Connor Hellebuyck at $8.5 million. You've got Sorokin $8.25 million. Saro 7.74, but nobody's really come that close to Price. I mean, Bobrovsky did a few years ago at 10. Price obviously 10.5, but Shesterkin is looking for reportedly around 12. So what we've heard from Jeremy Swayman here in recent days, and what we've heard on Shesterkin in the last couple of days, these two guys are really looking to reset the goalie market here. That seems to be a huge part of their agenda, that obviously to not only get themselves paid well, but to set up future top goalies to get bigger money too. And we've seen the Sens to go in cycles, and we've seen goalie salaries kind of spike up, but then teams get scared off of it, and then they kind of leveled out a little bit. That's why you've seen a lot of these other high-level goaltenders getting $7 to $8 million instead of that 10, 10.5, 11. Nobody's really eclipsed Carey Price in all that time. It's not like anybody hasn't really deserved it, but Shesterkin obviously feels like he does. And the Rangers apparently are willing to make him the highest-paid goalie and eclipse the Price contract, but it sounds like they're not, at least at this point, because if they were, it would be done, willing to go to 12. So obviously if Shesterkin is looking for 12, we know the Rangers are apparently willing to go at least a little bit above 10.5. We know that. So where does that leave? That leaves probably about $1.5 million gap, assuming that that's where the Rangers are at, but we can't confirm that 100%, right? So what does this all mean? Even LeBrun said, it sounds like Shesterkin's pretty intent on getting that contract. Is it going to be with the Rangers or somebody else's? It was his wording. So it didn't really want to basically say he was going to be traded or end up leaving as a UFA, but he also confirmed again, so this is the second time we've heard this, that they want to put the negotiations on the shelf once the regular season starts, so they'd like to have this done as soon as possible. We've heard that the Rangers clearly want to make Igor a big priority here and get him signed, but it's also, tons of money, big commitment, and right now, doesn't sound like a deal is real imminent, but time will tell on this one. We'll have to wait and see. Is Igor getting his money from the Rangers, or is he going to end up having to go elsewhere? We'll see. Some updates on latest Ullmark as well in Ottawa. Really no big surprise if you follow the team closely, but we know that the Sens and Ullmark are going to be having contract extension talks. They have not done so as of yet, and that does not mean anything negative whatsoever. Steve Sayos has made it pretty clear that he wanted to give Ullmark opportunity to get familiar with the city. He's got a young family with kids. Get used to the team, get used to your teammates, get used to the city, make sure the whole package, everybody's comfortable, and kind of get through training camp here. And I think it's before they really engage in talks. So they probably had some, informal off the record talks, nothing serious, but at this point, no serious negotiations have taken place, but that's by design. So for Sens fans, you have no reason to be concerned whatsoever. Even Darren Dreger said that there's no reason for, any anxiety or anything like that. I know there's been players that have come and gone a lot in recent years, and we can't guarantee Ullmark's going to sign long-term and stay, but at the same time, there's no reason to panic because, like I said, it's not that Ullmark won't talk, and it's not that the Sens don't want to either. Obviously, they traded for him. They really like this guy. They see him as being a huge part of the future, but they wanted to let him get comfortable and kind of let the city and everything kind of sell itself so that when they talk about money, there's no other concerns. So that will take place in due time. Phil Kessel still wants to make a return and play, but obviously not getting a lot of interest. Reports are from TSN Insider Trading that if anybody's concerned about his Ironman streak, that it's not a concern. He's open to a part-time role. This guy just wants to play, and it's obviously been struggling. He did not play last year and is still looking for that opportunity. So again, hard to say if Kessel will get the interest. At this point, we're, into camp now almost a week, and he still doesn't even have a PTO. So hard to imagine it happens. I would think at some point Phil might just have to give it up and hang up the skates, but he's still looking to play if somebody wants to give him an opportunity. The Los Angeles Kings are reportedly possibly looking at the center market as well. Dave Pagnotta and Dennis Bernstein of the fourthperiod.com are reporting that the Kings are looking for a bottom six center. They might find it internally, but they want to kind of examine the trade market to kind of see what's out there. Of course, they traded Pierre-Luc Dubois, which will give Byfield a bigger opportunity at center. But they still have Kopitar and Danault. And it's the fourth line center role that they have some concerns about mostly. I mean, they have guys like Trevor Lewis, Alex Turcotte, Akil Thomas, all in camp, and they've all played center before and could be an option. But I don't think that they're completely sold on that idea as well. And, of course, with Kaliev out injured long-term for a few months, they obviously might have another opening there that they didn't plan on before. So we'll see what happens. But obviously the Kings are looking for some depth and may make a trade regarding a bottom six center if they can find the right deal. In Montreal as well, there's some reports that one of their young prospects may be kind of forcing a trade here. Kapanen has looked really, really good in Habs training camp and preseason action here thus far. And there's belief that, it might force their hand to move Christian Dvorak. I mean, Dvorak's been a name that's already been mentioned in the rumor mill. We've heard, between him and Armia especially, being guys that are on expiring contracts, not expected to have, futures with the club beyond the current season. It could have been dealt anyways, but then when you see a guy like Kapanen come into camp and play as well as he had, or has so far, it's kind of forcing the opportunity here that you need a roster spot to open for this guy because he's earned it. So, there is belief that even if it means getting a mid-late round pick, something that might not be, what you were hoping for in a Dvorak deal, that you may have to do it to free up some cap space in a roster spot. As I mentioned before, freeing up some money would be good for them as well to get out of LTIR. So there's multiple benefits here. So look for a Dvorak move if things continue. At least that's the way things are trending. Of course, no guarantees that they decide to make that move, but I know seen Montreal media members, multiple of them mention that Kapanen has looked so good that he could very well take Dvorak's spot. So we'll see. Leaf writer as well for The Athletic, Kevin Papetti, made a suggestion on Twitter yesterday. Jesse Puljujarvi, who's playing with the Pittsburgh Penguins right now, had a hat trick, of course, and it was the first two hat tricks of the preseason. The Penguins were playing the Buffalo Sabres, and J.J. Peterka had the first hat trick of the preseason, and then Puljujarvi followed right behind him with all three Penguin goals. And he made a comment on Twitter suggesting that maybe the Leafs, if they could try to get Puljujarvi out of Pittsburgh for defenseman Connor Timmins, he said it would be a fun trade. Now, of course, he's not talking with any kind of intel suggesting that those two teams have had talks about this, of course. We know Kyle Dubas, former Leaf GM, is now the boss of the Penguins, and obviously would know Timmins well. He's the one that brought him in and signed him to that contract. Could the Penguins maybe use some more help on the blue line? It's a possibility. We know the Leafs probably do want to move Timmins to create some spot, space-wise and roster-wise. So, again, could Puljujarvi come in and maybe battle with some of the other guys for a bottom six role? it's certainly a possibility. I wouldn't completely rule out if those two teams did have conversations about Nick Robertson, because we don't know the future for him. I mean, he is, signed right now. He's playing. He's in training camp, playing for the Leafs tonight in preseason action. But again, there's still some reporters out there that believe there's still a decent possibility that Robertson could be dealt, especially with guys like Pacioretty, Nyes, McMahon. They very well could end up, by bringing Pacioretty in, it could kind of move Robertson either to play play on the right side instead of the left, or maybe not even have a spot, depending on how everybody else does. Not to say that he can't play himself into a spot. I think he can, but with the guys they've brought in, it's less of a given than it was before, when everybody was saying, Robertson should come in, he's going to have a guaranteed top 9 spot. And it's like, I don't know about that anymore. Pacioretty's look pretty good, and it seems like they're, determined to bring him in. So, again, this is just something suggested by a writer on Twitter, so it's, far from a guarantee that's going to happen. I'm not really calling it a rumor that they're going to do it or anything, or even having these talks. But what would your suggestions be on this? We know, like I said, Timmins is a likely trade candidate for the Leafs. Could Puljujarvi be an interesting addition to their bottom 6? I don't know that they really even need a forward, to be honest. If they move Timmins, I think it'd be more of a cap dump. But some interesting thoughts nonetheless. Really just adding this into the video for some food for thought from the fans, especially I know enough Leaf fans watch these content here. Would you be in favor of that type of move? Or if they do move Timmins, should it be strictly for a draft pick or future considerations or something along those lines, just to free up the space on the roster spot and the salary cap? Let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.